What if everything you were taught about money was wrong? Not a little wrong. Completely, fundamentally, backwards wrong. Robert Kiyosaki grew up with two fathers. One of them had a PhD, a stable government job, and worked hard his entire life, and died broke. The other never finished the 8th grade, but became one of the richest men in Hawaii. One father told him, "Go to school, get good grades, find a safe job." The other told him, "The rich don't work for money, they make money work for them." Same kid, two completely opposite philosophies. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why one path leads to a lifetime of financial struggle, and the other leads to freedom. This is Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, one of the best-selling personal finance books of all time, translated into over 50 languages, and honestly, one of the most controversial too. Some people call it life-changing, others call it oversimplified. By the end of this video, you'll be able to judge for yourself, because I'm going to break down every major idea in this book, step by step. Let's get into it. Before we dive in, let's quickly meet the two fathers this book is built around. Poor Dad was Robert's biological father, a highly educated man, the head of the education department in Hawaii. He did everything right by traditional standards, went to college, got advanced degrees, climbed the career ladder. But he lived paycheck to paycheck, drowned in debt, and left almost nothing behind when he passed away. Rich Dad was his best friend's father, a man with an 8th grade education who started as a small business owner and eventually built an empire of real estate, businesses, and investments. He became one of the wealthiest men in the islands. Young Robert had access to both. And instead of picking a side emotionally, he did something most of us never do. He studied the difference. He watched how each man thought about money, talked about money, and made decisions about money. And what he discovered is the foundation of this entire book. It's not about how much money you make, it's about how you think about money. This book isn't really a how-to investing guide with specific stock picks or step-by-step formulas. It's a mindset book. It's about rewiring the beliefs most of us absorbed growing up, often without even realizing it, and replacing them with the thinking patterns of people who actually build wealth. So let's break this down into the 6 core lessons Rich Dad taught Robert, plus a few of the practical frameworks the book is famous for. Section 1. The rich don't work for money. Here's the first lesson, and it's the one that flips everything on its head. Poor Dad's advice was simple. Study hard, get good grades, and find a secure, high-paying job. That job becomes your source of income for life. Work hard, earn a paycheck, retire with a pension. Rich Dad's advice was the opposite. The poor and the middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them. What does that actually mean? Think about the typical cycle most employees fall into. You wake up, go to work, trade your hours for a paycheck. That paycheck comes in, and it goes right back out. Rent, bills, groceries, maybe a little debt payment. Then you do it again the next month, and the next. Fear of not having enough money pushes you to work. Then when you get paid, desire for more things pushes you to spend it. Fear, then desire. Over and over. Kiyosaki calls this the emotional trap that keeps people working for money their entire lives without ever escaping it. Rich Dad believed the real skill isn't working harder for money. It's learning to make money generate more money on its own. That means acquiring things that pay you, instead of only trading your time for a paycheck. This is a scary idea for a lot of people because our whole education system, and honestly most of our family conditioning, pushes us toward job security. Get the degree, get the title, get the raise. And there's nothing wrong with having a job. The book isn't saying quit your job tomorrow. What it's saying is, don't let a job be the only engine of your financial life. If your only strategy is work harder, you're always going to be trading time for money, and time is the one resource you can never get back. The mindset shift Rich Dad wanted Robert to make was this. Instead of asking, how can I earn more at my job? Start asking, how can I build something that earns money whether I'm working or not? That single question is the seed for everything else in this book. Section 2. Why the rich don't chase money for its own sake. A related idea. Rich Dad hammered home constantly. Money itself isn't the goal. Financial education is the goal. Most people, when they want more money, look for ways to earn more. A raise, a second job, a side hustle that trades more hours for more dollars. Rich Dad believed this was treating the symptom, not the disease. The real problem isn't a lack of money, it's a lack of financial knowledge. He used to tell Robert and his friend Mike, "It's not what you don't know that's the problem. It's what you think you know that just isn't true." This is why Rich Dad refused to simply pay the boys more when they asked for a raise while working for him as kids. We'll get to that story in a second. He wanted to teach them how money actually works, not just hand them more of it. Because someone who doesn't understand money will lose it no matter how much they earn. You've seen this with lottery winners, professional athletes, and celebrities who make millions and still end up broke. And someone who does understand money can build wealth starting from almost nothing. That's the real thesis of the book. Financial intelligence matters more than income. Section 3. The story of the 10 cents. Let's actually tell that story, because it's one of the most memorable parts of the book. When Robert was 9 years old, he and his friend Mike wanted to make money. So they asked Mike's father, Rich Dad, to teach them how. Rich Dad agreed, but not in the way they expected. He put them to work in one of his stores for 10 cents an hour. It was boring, repetitive work, and after a few weeks the boys were furious. 10 cents an hour felt like nothing. They marched into Rich Dad's office to demand a raise. Instead of giving them one, Rich Dad said something that stuck with Robert for the rest of his life. He told them that most people spend their whole lives angry at their job, blaming their boss, and waiting for a raise. And that reaction is exactly the trap. He explained that if they quit right then out of anger, they'd learn nothing. But if they stayed and worked without pay, and used the time to actually study how the business ran, they might learn something far more valuable than 10 cents an hour. That was the turning point. The boys stopped focusing on their tiny paycheck and started paying attention to how Rich Dad ran his stores, managed his money, and made decisions. That shift in focus from "how do I get paid more" to "how do I understand the system" became the foundation of everything Robert learned from Rich Dad afterward. The lesson here isn't work for free, it's this. Your job can be a classroom, not just a paycheck. The people who advance fastest are usually the ones paying attention to the bigger picture, not just clocking hours for a wage. Section 4. Assets versus liabilities, the most important concept in the book. Now we get to the single most famous and most useful idea in the entire book, the difference between an asset and a liability. Most people think they know what these words mean. But Kiyosaki gives them a definition that's brutally simple and completely different from how most of us were taught. An asset is anything that puts money in your pocket. A liability is anything that takes money out of your pocket. That's it. That's the whole framework. No accounting degree needed. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. By this definition, your house, the house you live in, is usually a liability, not an asset. Why? Because even after you buy it, money keeps flowing out. The mortgage, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, utilities. Unless that house is generating income for you, it's pulling money out of your pocket every single month. This was one of the most controversial claims in the whole book, and it directly contradicted what Poor Dad believed, that a house is the biggest, safest asset a person can own. Rich Dad's view was that a paid-off rental property that generates rent is an asset, a stock that pays dividends is an asset, a business that runs and profits without you physically being there is an asset, but the home you personally live in, still paying a mortgage on? That's money going out, not in. It might appreciate in value over time, but appreciation isn't guaranteed. And in the meantime, it's costing you. Now think about what most people do the moment they get a raise or a bonus. They buy a bigger house, a nicer car, new furniture, all liabilities. Kiyosaki calls this the trap that keeps the middle class stuck. They earn more, then immediately increase their liabilities to match, so they never actually get ahead. Bigger income, bigger liabilities, same net financial position, forever. The rich do something different. When they get extra money, they use it to acquire more assets, things that generate income. And they let that income eventually pay for the liabilities and luxuries, if they want them at all. In other words, buy the asset first, let the asset buy you the liability later, if you even still want it. This leads to Rich Dad's simple formula for building wealth. 1. Reduce your liabilities as much as possible. 2. Acquire assets, things that put money in your pocket. 3. Use the income from those assets to fund your lifestyle and eventually to buy the liabilities, nice house, nice car, with cash flow from your assets, not your paycheck. This is the entire game, according to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Not earn more, not save more, even though saving matters. The real game is acquire income-generating assets until the income from those assets covers your expenses. At that point, and this is important, you're financially free. Not necessarily rich in the flashy sense, but free, because you no longer have to trade your time for money to survive. Section 5. The cash flow patterns of the poor, middle class, and rich. To make the asset/liability idea even more concrete, the book breaks down 3 different cash flow patterns, basically 3 different diagrams of how money moves through a person's life depending on their financial class. The poor have a simple pattern. Money comes in as income, and it goes straight back out as expenses. There's no accumulation happening at all. Income equals outflow, month after month, with nothing left to build on. The middle class has a slightly more dangerous pattern. Money comes in as income, and it flows out to cover expenses, but it also flows out to cover liabilities that look like assets. This is the bigger house, the nicer car, the credit card debt from lifestyle upgrades. On paper, it can look like progress, a nice house, a new car in the driveway, but underneath, it's actually money continuing to leave their pocket every month, dressed up to look like wealth. Kiyosaki calls this the trap that keeps doctors, lawyers, and executives, people who earn great salaries, stuck in the same financial position their whole lives, sometimes worse than people who earn far less. The rich have a completely different loop. Income flows into assets. Those assets generate more income. That income either gets reinvested into more assets or it's used to cover expenses and liabilities, but critically, the asset column keeps growing regardless. The money works in a cycle that feeds itself, instead of a straight line that empties out every month. The point of laying this out visually in the book is to show that your paycheck size isn't actually what determines your financial future. The pattern your money follows is what determines it. A person earning $50,000 a year who consistently funnels money into assets can end up wealthier than a person earning $500,000 a year who funnels all of it into liabilities. Section 6. Mind your own business. Here's a lesson that trips a lot of people up when they first hear it, because it doesn't mean what it sounds like. Mind your own business doesn't mean start a company and quit your job. It means don't confuse your profession with your business. Rich Dad's point was that most people spend their entire lives building someone else's business. If you work as an employee, you're using your time and energy to grow your employer's asset column, not your own. Your job title might be manager or engineer or whatever, but that's your profession, not your business. Your actual business is your asset column. It's whatever you're doing on the side, outside your job, to accumulate real estate, investments, intellectual property, or ownership stakes in income-generating things. Rich Dad's advice: keep your day job if you need the stability and the income, but every month use part of that income to build your own asset column on the side. Over years, your asset column becomes your real business, the thing that eventually can replace your paycheck entirely. This is why so many wealthy people keep working seemingly ordinary jobs while quietly building serious portfolios of real estate or investments on the side. Their job funds their life. Their business, their assets, is what actually builds their wealth. Section 7. The history and power of taxes and corporations. This section of the book gets a little more technical, but the core idea is worth understanding. Rich Dad taught Robert that the wealthy use corporations and legal structures to protect and grow their money in ways employees typically don't have access to. Employees earn, get taxed, and then spend whatever's left. Business owners and investors, using proper legal structures, can often earn, spend on legitimate expenses, and then get taxed on what's left over. A completely different order of operations that can make a significant difference over time. The book isn't a tax manual, and Kiyosaki is upfront that this isn't legal or tax advice. It's meant to open your eyes to the fact that the tax code, corporate structures, and financial systems aren't neutral. They were largely shaped by, and often favor, people who understand how to use them. The lesson isn't, go incorporate tomorrow. It's, financial literacy includes understanding the rules of the game, not just working hard within a system you don't fully understand. Section 8. The rich invent money. One of the boldest claims in the book is this: opportunity doesn't run out, but most people are trained to believe it does. Rich Dad's view was that the biggest asset anyone has isn't money. It's their mind. People with strong financial education can spot opportunities that others walk right past, and they can create value and money seemingly out of nothing through deals, businesses, or investments that less financially literate people wouldn't even recognize as opportunities. Meanwhile, people who were taught to fear risk and chase job security often let genuine opportunities pass by because they were never trained to recognize or evaluate them. Kiyosaki argues that financial IQ, the ability to read numbers, understand a deal, and manage risk intelligently, is what separates someone who sees an opportunity from someone who sees only danger in the exact same situation. This ties back to the book's biggest recurring theme. It's not about the money in front of you right now. It's about the financial knowledge you're building, because that knowledge is what lets you keep creating opportunities for the rest of your life. Even if you started with nothing, and even if you lost everything tomorrow. Section 9. Overcoming obstacles. Kiyosaki spends a good portion of the book on why, even when people learn all of this, most still don't act on it. He identifies 5 main obstacles that hold people back from building wealth, even after they understand the concepts intellectually. Fear, specifically fear of losing money. Everyone feels this, rich and poor alike. The difference is that financially educated people learn to manage and work through that fear instead of letting it freeze them into inaction. Cynicism, doubt, and negative self-talk. Thoughts like, that only works for other people, or the market is rigged, or I don't have enough money to start. Cynicism feels like caution, but it usually just becomes an excuse to never try. Laziness. And Kiyosaki makes an interesting point here. Busy people are often the laziest because they stay busy specifically to avoid confronting an issue, like their finances, that makes them uncomfortable. Being constantly occupied can be its own form of avoidance. Bad habits, because wealth building at its core comes down to daily habits repeated over years. Pay yourself first, track your spending, keep learning. Small, consistent habits compound, just like bad ones do. Arrogance, pretending to know something in order to cover up the fact that you don't. Kiyosaki argues that arrogance combined with ignorance in financial matters is one of the most expensive combinations there is, because people who won't admit what they don't know also won't go learn it. The message across all 5 obstacles is the same. The barriers to wealth are rarely purely external. They're mostly internal. Knowledge alone doesn't change your finances. You have to actually confront the emotional and psychological patterns standing between you and using that knowledge. Section 10. Getting started. Practical steps. Toward the end of the book, Kiyosaki offers some more concrete starting points for people who want to actually apply all of this. Here are the core ones. Find a reason greater than reality. Building wealth is hard, and if your why isn't strong enough, you'll quit the first time it gets difficult. Most people say they want to be rich, but they haven't connected it to a real enough reason to push through obstacles. Make daily choices, not excuses. Every financial decision, what you buy, what you invest in, what you read, is a choice. Rich Dad's philosophy is that your current financial position is the sum of years of small choices, and it can be changed the same way, one choice at a time. Choose your friends carefully, not to abandon people, but to be intentional about who you're learning from. If everyone around you thinks about money the same limited way, you'll absorb that thinking too, often without even noticing. Master a formula, then learn new ones. Kiyosaki encourages picking one strategy: real estate, a specific type of business, a particular investment approach, and getting genuinely good at it before jumping to the next shiny idea. Depth beats scattered effort. Pay yourself first. This is one of the most quoted lines from the book. Before you pay bills, before you spend on anything else, set aside money for your own asset column first. It forces you to find ways to cover expenses with what's left, which builds the discipline and creativity Rich Dad believed was essential to getting ahead. Pay your brokers well, meaning don't be afraid to pay experts, a good real estate agent, accountant, or advisor, for their expertise. Trying to do everything yourself to save money often costs far more in the long run through mistakes. Give, because giving teaches abundance. Kiyosaki, somewhat unusually for a finance book, argues that giving, whether money, time, or knowledge, trains your mind to operate from a mindset of abundance rather than scarcity, and that this mindset shift matters for wealth building too. Section 11. Criticism and limitations of the book. Now, to be balanced, because this video isn't here to just hype up the book, it's worth mentioning some common criticisms, since you'll definitely run into them if you look this book up. Some critics point out that Rich Dad is a somewhat vague, almost archetypal figure rather than a clearly documented real person, and that some of the specific stories in the book may be more illustrative parables than literal history. Others argue the house is a liability. Framing is an oversimplification. For many people, a paid-off home does function as a long-term asset, and the accounting-style definition Kiyosaki uses isn't how home ownership works for everyone. Financial professionals have also noted that the book is extremely light on specific, actionable investment mechanics. It's much stronger as a mindset shift than as a how-to manual. None of this necessarily makes the book wrong, but it's fair to say Rich Dad, Poor Dad is best treated as a mindset and philosophy book, not a technical investing guide. The real value most readers report isn't a step-by-step plan. It's a fundamental shift in how they see money, assets, and financial decision-making, which then pushes them to go seek out the technical education elsewhere. Conclusion. So let's bring it all together. Rich Dad, Poor Dad isn't really about getting rich quick or even about real estate or stocks specifically. It's about a mental shift. Stop working only for money and start learning how to make money work for you. Understand the real difference between assets and liabilities. Build your own asset column, even while keeping your day job. Face the internal obstacles, fear, cynicism, laziness, bad habits, and arrogance that keep most people stuck, regardless of how much they earn. The two fathers in this book represent two philosophies most of us are exposed to at some point in our lives. One built around security and working for money, the other built around ownership and making money work for you. Kiyosaki isn't saying one father was a bad person. Both were good men who loved him. He's saying one way of thinking led to financial struggle despite years of hard work, and the other led to freedom. The question this book leaves you with isn't, how much money do I make? It's, which father's voice is running your financial decisions right now? And is it time to start listening to the other one? If you found this breakdown useful, Let me know in the comments which idea hit you hardest, the assets versus liabilities framework, the cash flow patterns, or something else. And if you want more book breakdowns like this one, make sure you're subscribed, because there's a lot more where this came from. See you in the next video.